what we do. And the format we've chosen is really an open discussion where we invite guests and then, well, obviously discuss these topics in a podcast-like or videocast-like format. My name is Roman Leb. I will be the host for today, and my guest today is our founder and CEO, Michael Kräftner. We'll get right into it, but before we do, just two quick remarks. One would be, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them into the questions area of GoToWebinar, or if you're on YouTube, just put them into the comment section of YouTube so that our team can pick them up, forward them to us, and we can incorporate that into our live discussion here, or just tackle them at the end. And the second remark would be, we will record this session. So for anyone that signed up for today but unfortunately couldn't make it, you will then get the recording from us. All right, Michael, how are you doing today?
I'm really good, thank you, and thank you for inviting me. Yeah, this is, so to say, a special format. Yeah, it's cool. I obviously have some connections.
Yes, me too.
Yeah,
me too.
And actually, I even put on a black turtleneck for the really important stuff.
Very stylish. Very stylish. Yeah,
Steve Jobsing it out.
I don't have a turtleneck, unfortunately, so I would have put it on if I had one.
It's itchy like hell. Don't do it anyway.
Yeah, I can imagine. All right, Michael. So the topic for us today, and we've postulated it as a big trend for 2022, is the content supply chain. Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, the two of us have discussed this in great detail over multiple weeks and even months. But for anyone who has never heard of this term before, can you give us a short explanation or definition of what it is and why this is so important?
Well, I think the term is pretty self-explanatory, and that's the cool part of it. But of course, it has some intricacies that needs to have some light shed on. Quite frankly, we are in the business of managing and providing content to different endpoints for 15 plus years now. And we obviously by that have collected a lot of real world examples. And we all, me too, and not the least because of COVID and the transformation that it actually brought us, like online or mobile, let's say digital shopping is on an all-time high. So for more than 20 years now, shopping stuff online, and by that digital, is actually mainstream. And still we figured out that regardless if it's B2B or B2C, that, so to say, the actual representation or presentation of products that we all see on, let's say, whatever storefronts we're talking about, and wherever we can buy something there or just get information about products, is actually in many cases still pretty poor. So we figured that many of those brands who are really obviously struggling are actually invested a lot of money in their, let's say, e-commerce platforms, et cetera, and then something isn't right. Yeah? So why isn't the content better? Why isn't content more engaging? And essentially, we found out that in many cases, it's the lack of a content supply chain, because with any, so to say, raw material that needs a lot of processing to end up as an engaging product, content is just the same. And this means that, and this is what we actually thought of, okay, unifying something that starts with creation of content, then comes the management part, and then it goes into routing of content. And routing is more than just putting it somewhere. It's also creating understanding and insights to actually then have a real cycle, so to say, or a chain that has an end point that actually is close to the starting point in some cases. So long story short, it's something that can be compared to traditional supply chains. Yeah? So you have a great restaurant, you just bought it, it's the best location in the city, you have you have a great chef there, and then something is wrong because the only dish you can serve is, I don't know, let's say spaghetti, because there is no one who takes care, so to say, that all the other amazing ingredients that you would need for a broader offering, so to say, are actually there. So yeah, you can still do spaghetti, but you can't do more. So long story short, you need to actually take care of stuff that's happening along that true supply chain. The analogy with the spaghetti would be like, okay, if you're making spaghetti, if you're a great, so to say, restaurant, you actually care about the wheat fields, so to say. You care about the manufacturing processes that happened before to actually give you all the pasta, so to say, you need, so that at the end of the day, it is more than just plain basic spaghetti, but it's the best spaghetti and the best pasta you can get. And the same applies to content.
Yeah, true. Now I can speak from experience here also, just from my daily work. But maybe one thing that I wanted to ask you also about or discuss with you is, you mentioned that like great products deserve great presentation, especially on the storefront, like where the actual transaction takes place. And I'm just, I mean, we know it because we discussed it, but maybe for anybody that is listening in, when we looked at, if you remember the heat maps, right? Of we looked at various e-com stores or examples of e-com stores, and especially at the individual product page. So no like overview of products or like a specific category, but really down to the individual product, how much attention actually goes on the product depictions or the visuals that are there. And just I mean, I don't have it here right now, but just for everyone that is joining us today, obviously in most cases on the left hand side, you have some form of visual of that product, right? Then you have some copy or some description with a title and some information that you provide. You have a price, you maybe have reviews there, and some form of call to action button. And when we looked at this and analyzed this, I mean, we realized that a lot of the attention, and in this case it was measured with eye tracking, goes to the product visual. Hence, we spend a lot of time on ensuring, you know, all sorts of site components that are there on the store, you know, writing as compelling of a copy as we can. But just if you would apply the Pareto principle, you would, just from the amount of attention that the product visual gets, you would have to put way more effort into that, because that's what like most people look at it most of the time when they're there.
Well, absolutely. And I think we all need to understand, and I think that goes to us as CELUM, as a company itself, not just as somebody who makes technology that you know allows certain things. For us, it's the same thing. I think just 3 years ago, we struggled ourselves much more than we do nowadays, where we have, for all the different stuff that we do, for all the different channels that we play in, a structured content supply chain, and we're far not at, so to say, at the pinnacle, but that changed a lot on how much we produce and how quickly we can produce it, etc. Because, and I think we all need to understand this as managers of companies, as people that are responsible for the success of a company, is it's a content attention game now.
Yeah.
In a digital world, the only way you can normally differentiate yourself in B2B and B2C alike, and regardless if you're the brand or if you're a retailer, the only way you really can differentiate yourself is either the price game, and we can talk about now marketing strategy and pricing, etc., etc. But even with, there's always somebody who gonna underprice you, but that what remains is, so to say, is the product. And well, yeah, the product can be great, but if you're not presenting it, so to say, great, you will definitely be second. So long story short, at the end of the day, it's like who has the best content and who is, so to say, has the exact balance of quantity and quality, because it's not only just to have like one amazing photo and then, so to say, nothing else. For example, I'm researching car brands. That's, you know, I'm a car guy, so I try to figure out what big car brands are doing, and there is like, if this would be like a school test, that there would be no one better than a C, like A being the best and D or E would be worst, but nothing better than a C. It's horrible. It's really truly horrible what those large brands and their enormous marketing budgets are able to produce. Obviously, they still struggle somewhere. So if there is, especially, you know, in a field that is now being, so to say, let's say redefined with new players in the game, etc., and then you see traditional multi-billion car makers that are amateurish and strange. That's what I would say. So long story short, what everyone needs to understand, as not as CELUM wants to sell something to somebody, but really we ourselves also need to understand it, and we struggle sometimes, is it's a content attention game. Best content will create the sale, and that's it.
For sure. And like, I mean, I fully agree with that notion that it's about standing out, it's about being remarkable. But what I would add to that is, and that's like really from my personal experience also, like in most cases, and you said it with the pasta example, like the raw material is there, you have it, but it also has to be I would just call it in a channel and audience fit, right? Or it has to be fit for purpose, because you have the raw material, right? And then you put it in front of some audience. And usually what also happens oftentimes, let's say I create an ad campaign on Facebook, because that's, I think, what a lot of my counterparts can relate to, right? So we need to run a paid campaign, right? And then you put it there, and then in most cases, the raw material isn't in and of itself a one-size-fits-all solution. You can't just take this and slap it onto everything everywhere without going into the channel, or who am I putting this in front of. There's different aspects that you would like to highlight, or there's different also user journeys that go along with it. If I stick with that example of, we create a paid Facebook campaign, people are not there to shop, right? They are there to check what their network is doing, or they're just bored waiting at the bus stop, right? If you hit them cold with an ad, you need a different form of maybe also product depiction, right, to generate some interest. Apart from the whole segmentation that you do, that's a kind of a different story, but just the creative that you're using, and that is ongoing. Like, you always have to create something new, and you have to make it fit for the specific purpose you do. And that's why I think also it's so important, because this is like an ongoing repetitive thing. You always have to kind of go back to let's say the raw material, the source files, and then adjust them slightly for whatever purpose you want to use them for whatever distribution channel. And if you're a large organization, right? If you're like, that probably doesn't apply if you're like 5 people working in the same room. But if you're a large organization, people in many different locations, subsidiaries, business units, whatever, you need some form of framework to structure this also in an efficient manner. Because I have to go back, adjust the initial content piece that I have, the raw material, make it fit for whatever else I'm using it now. That's kind of an ongoing thing.
Absolutely, it has to say adopt. We talked about the whole channel perspective, specifically when we talk about mobile. Yeah. So two things I think what we all need to understand when we communicate mobile is, nobody gives a crap about your brand mobile, and nobody does consume any kind of content if it's not visual. So all we know as consumers, we know this horror scenario. You get the social ad, yes. We all have kind of an intrinsic adversity to click really on a social ad sometimes. I don't know if that's so to say, this is a personal thing and with people I talk, but let's say yes, once in a while you click on something like that, and then you end up in an experience that has nothing to do with the channel you're coming from. Like, or you have to actually then scroll half an hour, or the dreaded video where the brand's logo is composing itself like for 4 seconds. That's okay if you're doing a cinema spot, so to say, and even then it could bore people, but they cannot run away, or will not run away at that point. But honestly, social buyers, in this case, social mobile buyers, will immediately, like, the likeliness that you lose that sale, meaning that there is no conversion at all, is extremely high. And I think this is also interesting that, again, we tried to make one size fits all because, again, our processes and even the technology that we deploy isn't really ready to create that kind of content diversity. Really, well, you can actually stop doing it at all. Yeah, stop spending money to Facebook via an Instagram ad, and stop doing this at all. Yeah, save that money and don't do it, or do it right. I think that's something that also we actually, even in B2B, I think that's also something we as B2B marketers need to understand, that after 2 years of being in home office and working, so to say, and buying most of all personally in my private life, I buy a lot of stuff online now for the last 2 years. This counts for everyone. And then I have a transaction experience. I have a product experience with one of the companies that my company works with, and that's so much worse than the stuff that I have been used now. So long story short, what I mean is B2B needs to catch up to B2C finally, because we all are used to have better experiences. And that's actually also something that needs to be taken into account. And actually, I don't see a lot of improvement there, or a sense of urgency out there in the field, which is actually bad.
I 100% agree. And what I would add to that is, like, because I had to smile when you mentioned this, because I know it also, because that there's like this notion of to stick with the example of creating, like, let's say a paid advert on Facebook or on Instagram, then you need to have a specific format, right? And then this like kind of 5-second build-up of the logo and not getting to the point, and then maybe also having a crappy imagery of what you want to sell me here. This is like, you have to get to the point. The format kind of or the objective then drives the format, right? If I can hit you up with a single image ad, right, that clearly shows a very clear product image, and then I fully agree with you, then you click on that, and then you get redirected to that landing page, and then it's like either a different imagery, and it's a whole different like theme that you're presenting there, right? So this, obviously, there is kind of an experience break that you have, and that definitely has a negative impact on conversion, because the clicking on the ad is not the ultimate conversion that I want you to take. I want you to buy that thing, right? So it has to be a seamless experience from start to finish.
Absolutely.
And I fully agree with you. I think a lot of B2C brands are ahead of this, right? Because B2B hasn't seen, in a lot of cases, the necessity as of now. And there's definitely something that can be learned from just having a seamless start to end experience.
Absolutely. And I think in general, what we also need to understand now is how easy it is now to compare products. And I think this is when you lose a potential deal, meaning so we talked about that with brands, and you see in literature, you see a lot of stuff. Yeah, okay, it's not a bad thing. So we are now talking about blended or hybrid commerce. So probably talking about customers already, it's just a lead at that point. But a customer probably doesn't really right now check out, but he'll come back, or he'll see another endpoint, and then he so to say picks the thread up. Yes, maybe, but it's more likely that if there is a basic buying intent with that, let's call him customer, that the customer actually might be going somewhere to a marketplace where your products are comparable with other products right away. And then, so to say, transparency starts to act in a way where, again, that brand wins that has the better content ongoing. And frankly, everyone is talking about, everyone wants to create the marketplace. And this sounds good, but a marketplace means some, so to say, profit from them. But for a lot of players on a marketplace, it gets much more competitive. And I think, considering that, it's a survival strategy for most brands to actually get their shit together when it comes to being able to, again, win with content. If it's the only way, so to say, that you really can win nowadays.
True, and absolutely, and just, I mean, we've all seen it in the past 2 years, especially, like kind of an acceleration of this whole trend that was anyway there long before, but just this having an experience with a product pre-purchase without actually having to hold it in your hands, right? So you interact with something. A lot of buying decisions, if I let's say take even a longer buyer journey, I research something, I compare different ones, I consume all sorts of content, either produced by the manufacturer or the seller itself, or by like third party or something, but I consume a lot, and I reach a consensus where I say, okay, that's the product I would like to buy. I have spent a lot of time. I have come to that decision without maybe even holding it in my hand or seeing it in real life. So that's already a fact. And just the competition that you have, and that can be on marketplaces, but there can be also just individual sales channels that all brands have. If they're stepping up the game, the only way is up, basically, or the only way out is up. So just falling behind is not an option. So the experience gain has to step up. And I fully agree with you there, that there isn't maybe on all fronts this sense of urgency, how important that actually is. Because if you shop online, then you are kind of limited in terms of, I can't just, if I want to buy a bike, right? And I say, there's no need for me to go to a bike shop and ride that bike to really experience it, but I want to find something online, then I have to have other means of experience this before I reach my buying decision. And that's where the content comes into place.
And I think that has a direct, of course, this is something more in B2C than it is in B2B, but keep in mind, I think the return rate is about 60% still, specifically in apparel and, you know, comparable industries. So this costs a lot of money. Many of those products being returned actually are not being resold anymore because they're not new anymore. They're not considered new. So this is a complete loss. So, you know, we've seen the rise of marketplaces, or so to say, brands like Zalando, and Zalando, so to say, it took them, I don't know what, 5, 6, 7, 8 years just to be, so to say, positive in daily business operations. And this doesn't include marketing and other stuff. So this is has actually a measurable and in this case a quite open impact on profitability, aka whether a brand makes money or not. And this is something, you know, the worse, or the worse your digital product presentation is, the more likely it is that a customer might return the product, if that's possible at all. It doesn't work with all products, but the customer might return your product more likely, and this has a negative impact on profitability.
For sure. And I would even add to that, like, I think when I think about this, I think a good product in terms of, like, let's say, can be also digital, but let's take a physical example for now. A good product in and of itself, if I have it and if I use it, is more of a customer retention tool, right? So if something is of particular quality and I like that, and then I will rebuy, I will reorder. Obviously that's all, there's a big thing going on, like the overall customer experience that comes into play here. But let's just say I'm super satisfied with the product. That's kind of what retains me as a customer. But if I have no means of checking this out prior, then kind of the digital avatar of that physical product, and then I'm subsuming now all sorts of content that you produce for this, is kind of the primary tool for acquisition. Because if I don't go into a store and hold that in my hands and check it out and kind of apply all senses, then like that's what I have, right?
And again, another controversial point from my end. Everyone talks about that everything needs to be a brand. And while this has some merit, I'm saying screw all that energy that runs into branding. As you said, there are numbers that actually, so to say, back that up. 70% of all shoppers say that the product is their number one reason for brand loyalty. So this is what you just said, okay? So still, it's not, because there's such an amazing brand. This probably goes for those, I don't know, top 10 brands, including certain, you know, brands that have a very emotional connection. And even if I'm not super happy with my, like, let's say, latest sneakers, but they're from that brand I just love, they can get away with that. But essentially, 70% people say the product is the reason for brand loyalty. And then, so to say, now you have a situation that essentially people don't give that much about your brand, definitely less than many brand managers think. And now you have the situation that you're actually not doing a great job at presenting your products, which again will fuel otherwise, so to say, into this making a pro that brand decision. It would be the product. So long story short, we see customers, and there are we see brands out there that actually, so to say, ignore this basic and fundamental motivations of their customers. They just ignore them, and then
Mm-hmm.
wonder why their digital strategy is not as successful as they hoped for. Because you need to present your products to actually get to customers that are not yet customers. So you need to do that, and if you're not doing that, you cannot rely on your brand. We see this now again with car makers very, very clearly. The loyalty to individual brands. I don't know. My granddad only drove Volkswagen. Okay, that's not happening anymore. People are much more likely, so to say, to make a decision based upon, again, a product that they like and a product experience that they enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. And I would add to that, like, I think the most successful brands, I mean, they were not created as successful brands. So there was a journey on how they got successful, right? And everything that you associate with the brand that kind of creates a form of authenticity or resonance with whomever you're selling to is a result. Because if you would have sold them, let's say you're a brand that has been on the market for 30 years, if you would have sold them crappy products for 30 years, word would have gotten out by now that this is actually not that good. And the first competitor that comes around that has just a better option for them, they would be gone, right? So that kind of, I think that there is a symbiosis, and I think I understand what you mean. But I would even say that like just brand and the products that you, or the product promise also is kind of indistinguishable, right? For a lot of them, yes, you have the brand and you have products, but they are also this is a symbiosis, right? So if you have crappy products, you will never be a successful brand with a loyal customer base.
So absolutely, of course. This is a basic thing, but we always assume that, so to say, we're talking about brands with great products, and so to say, they are always, so to say, undervaluing their products in some cases because the brand overshadows the product, but it actually it doesn't. But the brand gets much more attention than the product compared, so to say, what actually makes the sale. So the brand, again, more often than many people think, doesn't really make the sale. It's the actual product. And this goes specifically talking about modern marketing strategy that use, for example, influencers. Influencers very rarely have a direct impact. They associate themselves very rarely with one individual brand. You have this with sports personalities, you have this much more, but with the classic, so to say, influencer, they promote an individual product where they're, let's say, how should I put it? They're questionable trustworthiness, so to say, but still their followers invest that kind of trust in them, actually can only be applied to a single product. So that's the same thing. Yes, the product comes from one brand, and influencers might have, but again, this goes for the top and leading brands, where an influencer might try to associate oneself with one brand or with a couple of brands. I don't know, I like Lamborghinis and Louis Vuitton and whatever, but essentially, when they try to endorse stuff, it's mostly one product. And then it's a joint effort between the influencer that actually, I don't know, shows off a new sneaker, etc. And what happens if the audience tries to then go into a business transaction and then enter the, I don't know, influencer ABC promo code. But this story from there to there is completely product oriented and all about the product experience. And in many cases, doesn't work as well as it should.
Absolutely. And I really like what you said before, like the products are what actually make the transaction, right? And what actually create the revenue. The brand is kind of like a vehicle, and if it's done in a balanced way, they transport a certain emotionality around the whole product. But at the end of the day, you don't sell the brand per se, but you sell a branded product, right? Or you sell the product that has a wrapping, like a Christmas gift wrapping around it that makes it look nice, and all sorts of things come with it. They say like, oh, Volkswagen has a particular quality that is like kind of associated with it.
Exactly.
But still, you buy the car, right? You don't buy the brand.
I think this is a great point, because brand, and this is also what, in theory and in university you learn it that way, brand creates trust, so to say. So in our modern, like, again, digital first world, you would dismiss products that are associated, more likely dismiss products, regardless whether they are, so to say, amazingly presented, if they are associated with a brand that you have a negative association with. So you're gonna dismiss those products. You have a buying intent for, I don't know, new sneakers. There is 4 sneakers that you ran into, and one is from a brand you've never heard of. And again, sneakers is a very special type of product because there's about prestige and how expensive the sneakers maybe is really, but let's say a t-shirt, very plain and basic. So and then of course you would probably dismiss brands you've never heard of, or you had somehow a negative impression of, or they associated themselves with the wrong sports personality or the wrong football club. I don't know, but essentially this is just like like reducing the list for certain niche audiences. Brand again is very important. I don't want to, so to say, downplay the role of brand per se, because again, brand is trust and you have to build on that. But when it's about buying intent and equal offers to an audience, it's all about the product. I think that's important.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say, but that plays into the same field of what you just touched on, is like, if in doubt, right, you would always go with the trusted brand. Let's say all things equal, I have 2 white sneakers, one brand I've never heard of before, like kind of same price, right, kind of the same look and feel. Then I would always go with the brand that I know and trust. And what you just mentioned before, if it has no negative connotation for me, like that any form of that I have like a bad experience, like either personal or what I've heard of or something, then I would probably stay away from that. But if there is a trusted authority, I would go with that first. But on the other hand, like if I'm branching into a new product, trying something out, right, then you would really go into the nitty gritty. If you're like brand agnostic, if you say, I don't care about, like, this is just a white t-shirt to me, right? And I say this has a better quality, or this was just marketed more attractive to me, then you might opt in all for that.
Absolutely. But let's take a step back. I think what also is important to understand, talking about the content supply chain again a little bit, like, let's say now we have all understood how important, so to say, a great presentation for products is, and that they are the deal maker. But what, so to say, is the problem with many brands? Why doesn't everyone do it? And I think what many underestimate is how the production, so to say, of content actually works. I think there's a lot of old school thinking around where, we have an agency that does that for us. And with that, the problem starts. And honestly, I think that whenever supply chains have this kind of thinking with a low governance approach, they're extremely vulnerable. Frankly, again, talking about car makers, this whole chip crisis is actually an expression of the same attitude. So, hey, we buy everything, so to say, just in time, and we don't care about the actual supply chain. And then if the supply chain collapses or has issues, others, of course, prevail and have a different approach. And now in the content supply chain, I think it's very important that everyone understands that the problem that needs to be overcome is, it's an in-house thing to create, to create content, to put it through, let's say, compliance checks, etc. That's something that needs to be governed. It's about content governance. This is one part of that. And then, of course, it's about the collaboration around content between different in-house departments. We have the product people, we have the marketing people. Yes, we have external agency partners that might be, or photographers and stuff, videographers. In some cases, it's user-generated content, or to a certain extent, user-generated content. So if you want to use the whole, let's say, network that's necessary to establish a truly amazing content supply chain, you have to understand that this is teamwork. And you need also, so to say, by that, then you need to have the tools to get all these people then, so to say, in line. And I think this is also something that a lot of, because the alternative, and I'm talking, Roman, we talked about a lot of stuff when you started with CELUM. I thought that we were creating a lot of content that was, let's say, subpar. and that was not because people that were involved were stupid. That was because there were no processes in place and no tools that actually supported us in this early part of the supply chain, which is obviously as vital as any, but a very important part. So we had no content governance ourselves, and that was a huge issue for us and took us long to overcome.
Yeah, now I fully agree. And just a very, very practical example is going back to this notion of we have something already that's there, and we need to create a derivative of that, right? And just not having certain processes and tools in place expands that time to market by 2x at least, because you have to go back to the start. Worst, you don't even know that you already have something that is very similar to this, right? So you don't even know that you have something, and even if you know, then playing this through the whole supply chain, how we call it, right? Without a proper framework that governs from like the raw material out to I put it in front of the audience that I want to put it in front of, just expands the whole timeline, and it's just frustrating for everyone, and the outcome is just way less frequent, and I wouldn't say probably lower quality, but just the time is way longer. It's just way less efficient. And yeah, again, just by implementing a set of very simple processes, and how people conceptualize work, how they exchange ideas, how they break it down into chunk size pieces of work. That's kind of where it starts, and then you distribute it into the broader organization, or you say that's for that specific purpose. If you need to create a little bit of a different variant of that, you go back to the last step, take that, create a version that is now fit for the new purpose, and you're good to go, and you don't go all the way back, right?
Absolutely. And again, I think what we all can learn is, but just look around a little bit and look at what others do and how they do it, and sometimes really also like how bad they do it, and what might be the reason, because we're talking about large brands that have a lot of resources. Just recently I was I'm part of the ongoing research. I was trying to, let's say maybe cars, but let's look at commercial trucks, and same thing. It's really strange. It's like there's only a handful of pieces of content, and then a really crappy configurator behind it. So again, wow, okay, if I would be a small or mid-size, if I'm a fleet manager in one of those huge logistics companies, I'm definitely not going to use the online configurator and do stuff there. I have a different way of so to say buying the next 500 truck batch that we acquire. But it's a strange approach, and again, is something where you immediately, if you think about it, you get this feeling, okay, they had this, and I think the age of, well, we've passed that on to the agency. That's all I want to say. And the agency does everything, or whoever creates the content, so to say, does everything, and we don't care. This is over. The brands who do not accept that fact will eventually first suffer, then suffer more, and then probably be, so to say, in crisis.
Word. Yeah, I 100% agree on that. And I would even add one point to that, this like not taking responsibility for these individual components of the supply chain, and then also always having in mind, that's like from my point of view as a marketer also, the does this facilitate a buying decision, yes or no? And if it's a crappy experience, if it like the crappy configurator, and if it kind of hurts buying decisions and not facilitate somebody reaching a consensus and saying, yeah, that's for me, that's something that I would investigate further, that's interesting, then it's something that needs to be looked at and worked on and improved.
And absolutely, and I think it's something that brands need to understand, that this is something that's vital for the success. And I'm really stunned that we're now in the year 2022 and having this conversation, because we see a little bit into the organizations of our customers and talking about, in some scenarios, let's say multi-billion dollar company, how many people are responsible for, so to say, the content creation processes, or somehow in touch with that? 3. What? 3? Okay. How many people take care, and we talk B2B here, how many people are taking care of your brand? How's your brand unit? How large are they? Well, that's about 40. What? Why? And again, not to play brand versus product here, but this is an unhealthy ratio. Yeah. So yes, customer experience is all that's about, but customer experience with a very, very crappy product experience, again, talking about the digital portion still, because the, so to say, non-digital, the actual product experience, if it's a non-digital product, this then decides whether people stay loyal to your brand. But getting them to be a customer, this is, so to say, where the product again wins or makes the loss. So long story short, this is what we really don't understand, what I don't understand. And I think this is something that where most organizations really are lagging behind, with COVID, so to say, turning things upside down. The last 2 years, everyone was like, oh my God, we need to finally, come up with a new online shop or something like that. And this is great. That was cool. But then now you look at those obviously refurbished, so to say, online shops, and they're more or less like, from a consumer perspective, they're exactly the same. Like, okay, well, maybe there is one click less to actually check out stuff, or I don't know, payment is a little bit less cumbersome. Yeah. But that can't be all of it, so to say. And this is what really puzzles me and really makes me angry.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Michael, we're a little bit over time already. So just to wrap things up, you just mentioned this dilemma. How, just to bring in CELUM a little bit more here, because it's our event, how can we help here? How can we help here? What is your recommendation?
Well, of course, we also evolved, and we are, again, like as a brand ourselves, we are struggling, frankly. You know that story. That's your part. So, but we tried for companies like us, but of course for companies that are, and we are a product company essentially. That's what we are. Yes, brand is important. Brand has its merits and needs to be taken care of. But also with our perspective, it's like the product content piece that we struggled, and to a certain extent still struggle. Not at the end of our story here, but what we did is that we again emerged, so to say, from the managing content perspective to a managing or enabling a content supply chain that, yes, has a management component to it, but it's the create, manage, route perspective. All three equal, so to say, and routing can be replaced with engagement, etc., etc. That's a big story there, and this is definitely something where CELUM will evolve hardcore into. But again, we want to raise awareness with our existing customer base and with new customers, like obviously that we are the guys that provide technology and consulting/guidance to create working content supply chains.
Yeah. Amen.
That's it.
All right, cool. I don't think we have any questions, so I would say we can wrap it up for today. Thanks a lot, Michael, for your insightful information.
Thank you. Thank everyone.
And just as a closing remark, a quick one, we have also a new event series, a training series for all CELUM users. So if you're already using CELUM, 23rd of February and 24th of February, one will be in German, the one will be in English. There's a free series of hands-on user trainings. So just go to celum.com under events, and then you will find all the infos. Just wanted to bring this information also to you. All right, then have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.